Shalom guys, welcome back to another episode here at the Shav You Ministries with Casa de Israel Yara. I thank you for being here. If you like the content that we have on our channel, please like, subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please put it on the comment section down below. Also, if you know any youth or anybody that will benefit from our small teachings, please share and promote what we're trying to do here. Also, our congregation, I never put our address. It's going to be somewhere down here when I edit this video. It was integrated into Faith Life. And so Faith Life is a program in which we're going to be putting our broadcasting our teachings on Saturdays at 3:30. And also our announcements. And a lot of our content will be put in that program as well. So it's called the Faith Life app and faithlife.com. And you can find us there as well. So with that being said, let's get started with this week's Torah portion. So, this week's Torah portion is Pinchas. Now, this week's Torah portion has a lot of stuff, right? So, the outline, right, is Phinehas' reward for his righteous zeal. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Elohim's, God's commands Israel to harass Midian. A new census of Israel is taken. Very important. The count of the Levites. The grievance of Zelophehad's daughters, and the resulting laws of inheritance. Elohim shows Moses the promised land, which is very important. Also, Moses asks for a successor, and the continual daily Tamid offering, which is very important as well. We're learning a lot with Rico Cortez in the temple course. The Musaf offering, the weekly and annual Shabbats, the new moon. So it's a lot that is in this Torah portion, but we're going to focus on the moral aspect of this Torah portion. We're going to stick to the beginning. It's going to be very small, and I apologize that we're going to be able to go into everything. But my goal as a youth leader for my congregation and for the teachings that I've been recording is to, before we get into all the legal, the terminologies and the mystic part of the word, I want to be able to bring to you the moral tools that Elohim is looking for in His people, right? Because many people believe that they're looking for God to be an asset to their life, but God Himself is looking for people that can be an asset to his kingdom, to His enthronement in creation on earth, right? And so my goal is to, in this Torah cycle, to teach you as much as I can in the simplicity of the word, the moral tools that you need to stay pure, not perfect, not holy, pure for Elohim, so that He can see that, okay, you're not perfect, but you're doing the right thing, or you're trying to make yourself better and grow every day on my behalf to represent me correctly. That is my goal, and I hope I'm doing my best to teach you that. So we're gonna start this week with Numbers 25, and so this week's portion starts in Numbers 25 verse 10, but we're going to start with Numbers 25 verse 1, right, with a little bit of context into what's going on here. So Numbers 25 starts with this: while Israel remained at Shittim, the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab, for they invited the people to sacrifice to their God, and the people ate and bowed down to their God. So Israel joined themselves to Baal Peor, and the Lord was angry against Israel. The Lord said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of the people and execute them in a broad daylight before the Lord, so that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel." So Moses said to the judges of Israel, "Each of you slay his man who have joined themselves to Baal Peor." Then, behold, one of the sons of Israel came and brought to his relatives a Midianite woman. In the sight of Moses, in the sight of all the congregation of the sons of Israel, while they were weeping at the doorway of the tent of meeting. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he arose from the midst of the congregation and took the spear in his hand, and he went after the men of Israel into the tent and pierced both of them through, the men of Israel and the woman, through their body. So the plague of the sons of Israel was checked. Those who died by the plague were 24,000. So we see here that there is a very, very important lesson taught. Right, the people of Israel are at the bottom of the Moabite mountain. Right, so it says Israel was at Shittim. Right, as we read, Israel profaned themselves by whoring with the Moabite women. Right, so the leaders were integrating themselves with the Moabites, right? And in the way that they worship their god, right, Baal, was in a sexual manner, right? Baal was the god. So in the ancient Near East and in that time, right, they believed that they had to mirror what their god did, right? So God sent rain on the ground to be fertile, right? Like I said before, the biblical times are agricultural times, so they depended a lot on the times and the seasons, right? And so they depended a lot on the rain so that they can grow the crops. So they believed, right, that God rained, and then the ground was fertile, and they will be able to have crops and have the provision that they needed. So, in the same way, their rituals and how do I do this without keeping it as PG as I can? They did ritual sins, right? Sexual ritual sins for fertility, right? And they were dedicated to their God. Okay, so this is what Israel is doing right now, right? And so God says that He wants all the leaders to be put to death, impaled, right? And so Shittim is believed to be Israel's last stop, right? So this is after the 40 years. So we understand that Israel was cursed, right? The leaders that came out of Egypt, right? Because of their dishonoring the land and bringing a bad report, they are given a judgment saying that they will not go into the land, that they will die in the desert. So this is the generation that is supposed to go into the land, right? And so they have stopped at the plain of Moab and it's at Shittim, and this is the stop before going into the land. And so this is where Joshua sends his spies a little later after, and it is also believed that this is where Israel received the new covenant, right? So the Deuteronomic covenant is believed to be received here at the bottom of the plains of Moab here at Shittim. So there is a very important reference for what Israel is doing right now in Exodus, right? In Exodus 34, right, verse 15, if I'm not mistaken. I think I have it right here. It says the following. It says, watch yourself that you make no covenant within the inhabitants of the land into which you are going. So this is in Exodus. This is the people that died in the desert, right? Or it will become a snare in your midst. But rather, you are to tear down their altars and smash their sacred pillars and cut down their asherahs. For you shall not worship any other god. For the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Otherwise, you might make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they will play the harlot with their God, sacrifice to their gods, and someone might invite you to eat of his sacrifice, and you might take some of his daughters for your sons, and his daughters might play the harlot with their gods, then cause your sons also to play the harlot with their gods. So you shall make for yourself no molten gods, and you shall observe the feast. So here, right, in Exodus, Elohim has already established a law, a command, telling the people of Israel, the generation that passed, that they were not to whore around with the other nations' gods or accept their sacrifices, because with that being done, their sons will fall into the same thing. Not because it is a generational curse, because the kids will see the example of the parents. And so here Israel fulfills this, right? Because the generation that came out of Egypt dies in the wilderness, right? Because of the disobedience. And what did the kids see? Disobedience. They saw that their parents did not honor God, that they lived freely and mourn in the land, in the world, right? And they did not honor Elohim. So Israel attaches itself to Baal Peor, transferring alliance. So Israel, understanding the covenant that they have with Elohim, they decided to transfer their inheritance, their freedom, to Baal Peor in this sexual cult or ritual. Now, who is Baal Peor, right? So Baal is the name of the god, right? That's the name that they use to represent the god. And Peor is the location where he is worshipped. So Israel is basically close to the mountain of Baal Peor, right? This is where Balaam is last seen, where he's trying to curse, last Torah portion, he's trying to curse Israel. And in the moment that he wants to curse Israel, he blesses them. And he is on the Mount of Baal Peor. So Baal means owner, right? And it refers to the divine owner of the field, like I said before, fertility. And if not served correctly, you had no luck, right, in your service. And so this is what the Moabite women are teaching Israel, right? They're teaching Israel that if they don't follow Baal's rules and structures, right, that they won't have any luck in the land. And so it's a mind game that the Moabite women, right, are playing to Israel's leaders, right? And so there's one man, and it's interesting because there's a movement, right? There's a very dramatical movement that we have continually seen Israel fall into, right? Disobedience, lust. They have this sense of personally establishing their point of view over Elohim, right? They dismiss Elohim to fulfill what they want to do, right? And Elohim becomes a piece in their personal plan, right? They move Elohim out of the way. They do what they want, and when Elohim establishes himself in authority, then they react, right? And they mourn. And so it's interesting that here, right, when we read, it says that in this whole situation, right, they connect with the Moabite women, right? They worship Baal Peor. They transfer their alliance to Baal, right? And now there is a plague in the land and in the camp because of their disobedience. And so in this moment, right, Moses is called to impale the leaders, right, to put the leaders to death, to not have Israel have a plague to pay for the sins of these leaders. And Moses and the people of Israel are found in front of the tent of meeting mourning, and there is one of the leaders of Israel and one of the leaders of the Moabite women coming towards the tent of meeting to commit a sexual idolatrous act in the presence of Elohim, right? And so here Phinehas, what he does is spears through both of them, right? Now, why is this so important? What is Phinehas' moral stand right now so important, right? And many of you might think, who's Phinehas? So Phinehas is part of the Levitical priesthood, like I think is read here in our reading, right? And Phinehas is part of the guard of the tabernacle. So Phinehas fulfilled his role, right? He was supposed to be guarding the tabernacle. He was supposed to be leading the guarding of, protecting of the house of Elohim. And in the moment that one of the leaders of Israel and one of the leaders of the Moabites were going to bring this honor and shame to in the presence of Elohim, Pinchas acted on behalf of Elohim and he speared them. Now, it might seem very bloody. It might seem very, how did you say it? Aggressive. I don't know what term to use, right? But when you read that he speared through two people, you might see it as a negative connotation. But the importance in this is that these people were going to bring this honor and shame to the God of the Bible, into his presence. And Phinehas did something very great and very beautiful, which was defend God's honor. No matter what, right? Israel was being dishonorable to Elohim after all that we have seen them go through. Israel was being dishonorable to Elohim, and Phinehas said, I'm going to stand for Elohim. I'm going to stand for my faith and what I believe in, right? And so it's very important to understand that we're called to be righteous, right? And so here in Numbers, we see the following, right? So Phinehas stands for Elohim, and he said, and he's rewarded. It says, verse 10, Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, has turned away my wrath from the sons of Israel, in that he was jealous with my jealousy among them, so that I did not destroy the sons of Israel in my jealousy. Therefore, I give him my covenant of peace. And it shall be for him and his descendants after him a covenant of a perpetual priesthood, because he was jealous for God and made an atonement for the sons of Israel. Now the name of the slain man of Israel, who had slain the Midianite woman, was Simri the son of Salu, and a leader of the fathers of the household among the Simonites. The name of the Midianite woman who was slain was Cosbi, the daughter of Sur, who was a head of the people of a father of the house of Midian. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Be hostile to the Midianites and strike them, for they have been hostile to you with their tricks, with which they have deceived you in the fair of Peor, and in the fair of Cosbi, the daughter of the leader of Midian. There, the sister who was slain on the day of the plague because of Peor. So, here we see that there is an important moral teaching by Phinehas. It is that he had a role to defend God's honor, right? He was part of the or you can say royal guard of the tabernacle, right? His purpose and his function was to defend God's honor, defend God's house, right? That's what we're called to do, right? That's what I teach my youth, and that's what I'm hopefully able to teach you. That God is looking for people that are going to stand for Him and what He has established in His Word. And I think it's very simple, right? If we do our due diligence to learn about His Word, if we do our due diligence to understand His heart, right? Study the Word looking for what God wants in complete and utter freedom, right? You will be able to honor Him, right? We're called to be justice and righteous, right? And in Yeshua, right, in Matthew chapter 5, if I'm not mistaken, I have it right here. Matthew chapter 5 says the following. Matthew chapter 5 says the following. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for there is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for there is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. And this is Yeshua. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under foot of men. So Yeshua is teaching us a very important lesson, right? We're called to be salt in the world, in the earth. What does the salt do? The salt preserves, right? We're called to preserve God's word. We're called to honor Him, right? We're called to be different. We're not called to connect or to mingle with the world, right? We live in the world, but we're not of the world. Understand that sometimes you will be different. And the only way you will invoke change is if you stand for what you believe in and you stand for God and His honor. Bring honor to His name and He will honor you. Pinchas was honored by Elohim. Why? Because he stood for Elohim when his people in the world did not stand for him. Phinehas said, I will stand for Elohim. And it was one man. One man was able to bring peace to the camp. Why? Because he honored Elohim in his righteousness. Right? One man has brought our death into resurrection, which is Yeshua HaMashiach. Yeshua, Jesus Christ, has stood one man for the honor of Elohim and His word. We're called to be salt by the Son of Elohim. We're called to be an example, not by our words, by our actions. We're not saved by our actions. But guess what? The world cannot see God's people standing in a corner. They have to see them act like godly people. And how do you do that? Well, guess what? God's justice is in His word, His Torah, and His righteousness, and is what you give to the world. And utters humbleness, love, and patience, understanding. But always understand that there is a balance that we have to follow. Right? Righteousness, I found an article right here, and I'm going to read it real quick. It says the following. And it says, the first mention of the word righteousness is found in Genesis 15, verse 6. If you want to look it up, please do so. Which is part of a passage of an interaction between Abraham and Elohim. And it says, after these things, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision, saying, fear not, Abraham, I am thy shield. I am thy exceeding great reward. Abraham said to the Lord, what wilt thou give me, seeing I have got no children? And the steward of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, this shall not be thine heir, but that you shall have a son. And he brought him forth abroad and said, look now towards heaven and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. And Abraham believed in God, and he was counted by righteous. So Elohim counted Abraham righteous because of his faith. Right? Abraham was willing to do whatever it took to honor God. Abraham served on behalf of Elohim. If you want to know what God's complete character is, that he's looking for a God, a man of God, Abraham is one. And obviously our Messiah, Yeshua. What Abraham and Yeshua have taught us, and in Moses, is that you have to have an everlasting passion. Not for yourself, but for Elohim. To honor his word, to honor his kingdom, to understand his structure, his heart, so you can be counted righteous, not in the world's eye. Trust me, if you follow God, many people in the world are not going to find you righteous. But guess who is the most important to person, or who is the most important in your life? It should be Elohim at all times. And in Romans 4, verse 1 through 8 says, what shall we say then? That Abraham our father is pertaining to the flesh? Hath found. For if Abraham were justified by works, he hath whereof to glory, but not before God. For we saith the scripture, Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness. Now to him that worketh is a reward not reckoned of grace, but of debt. But to him that worketh not but for righteous, even as David also describeth the blessedness of the man unto whom God imputeth righteousness without works, saying, blessed are they whose iniquities are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord will not impute sin. So we see that Abraham was not counted righteous by his works, but he was counted righteous by the faith in God's works. Right? Our job is to represent God. What is that? Obey his word, obey his commandments, structure our lives around God, live according to it. And if you have to defend him, always defend his name and his honor. And above else, you have his name upon you. You will find honor in God's eyes when you honor Him in the world. When the world is trying to make you part of it, make you forget about what connects you to the source of life, which is Elohim. The moment that you stand for God is the moment that Elohim will be called righteous, because the world is going to see somebody that's different, and Elohim is going to show them why you're different. Please honor God and His righteousness at all times, and He will find you righteous in His eyes. Thank you for watching. Have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.